Hello, friends. It's Targaryen Parenting Corner. I don't have Parenting Corner theme music yet. I'm reading Rhaegar music. I know it's inexcusable, no Parenting Corner music, but I did give you the Helaena Detroit Grand Poobah's remix. So, put some respect on my name here. I'm doing what I can. And one of the things I do like to do, of course, is bring you other voices in the fandom. One of my favorite is Federica, also known as Fede, a.k.a. Lady Multifandom. Say hello, Fede.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
And the chat goes wild. All right, so we are here on I'm going to keep calling this Saturday morning for the whole stream. I don't care what time it is anywhere. It's Saturday night in Italy. It's 3 o'clock on the East Coast. It's morning for me. But hello, greetings, salutations. Aloha means goodbye. Here we are. We're here to talk about, I call it Parenting Corner. Really what I'd like to do, Fede, is to kind of take the perspective of each of the kids and think about the ride that they've had so far and where they're headed. Now, of course, you have been to the future. You have already seen the next episode, but you're not going to, of course, spoil anything or zip. Yeah, and in fact, you've actually flushed all that information out of your brain so that you can make clean prediction. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, I've unseen it.
Unseen it. There is no unsee button, as anyone who's been online knows. Oh boy, the takes on Twitter. So I'm pretty much ready to get off Twitter, Fede. Maybe we'll get to that later. I don't want to let the bad takes drive the conversation, but I have thoughts. Anyways, real quick. You can find Fede on Twitter. She is at Lady Multifandom, just like it sounds, Lady Multifandom, all one word. And Federica, of course, you write for a few different outlets. Winter is coming, and you're all over the place. You're up and comer in the media world.
Yeah, if you want to say it like that, for sure.
I think it sounds pretty good.
I dabble. Yeah.
Up and dabbler. Oh, that's pretty good. Little dabble, do ya? So, okay. So let's see. Where should we start? Please don't be too harsh to Aemond. Well, you're in the right place, Lizzie. Lizzie, I guess I didn't see the video I made yesterday, which you're forgiven for not watching every video that I make. I was pretty impressed by young Aemond's character. And, of course, I began to sort out the fight in the cave. I spent a few minutes on it in my video. And I kind of came down a little bit on Aemond's side. I did say that everyone had a hand. Aemond was provocative with his words and all that. But I think there's a couple people that misunderstood what I was trying to... I was not trying to absolve Aemond, obviously. He did provoke everyone with his words, and he threw out bastards, and he said, your mother's dead, and he said, go ride a pig. He said all kinds of stuff. He was talking that noise for sure. And that's why I think some people was trying to say oh, Aemond, you're making him a victim. I was like, well, no. Just because I said that they bullied him doesn't necessarily make him a victim. He wasn't asking for victim status. He stood up and said, oh, I got a dragon, I lost an eye, it was a fair change, I'm good with that. So it wasn't about necessarily paying the victim, but it's more like this is the Daemon of the green side, Fede. And I think book readers, Fire and Blood readers, have been waiting for this character because we know where the story's going. We know this is going to be a great character. It's already easy to see that his older brother Aegon is not taking anything seriously yet. And Helena obviously is a very interesting character, a dreamer. But Aemond, he is the strong spine, the true dragon of the green side. And I just wanted to celebrate that because they gave him an entrance that was every bit as good as Daemon's entrance in the first episode. That was what I was like. I was definitely fanboying Daemon a little bit after the first episode because he came across so strong. And I felt the same about Aemond.
He is definitely the big player in the green side. I doubt anybody really favors Aegon as much. He just doesn't have the spine, really. Aemond is a much more interesting character with, especially with his storyline. And you also drew a very good parallel with Daemon there because I do think that they're a foil for each other. And that they are totally written to be that way, both in the book and in the show. So it'll be interesting to see where that ends up going, especially next season. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to get interesting right in the next episode. It looks like he's already he's doing the toast, and yeah, I think we know probably what sort of punctuation note the season is going to end on, which is going to involve Aemond. So again, this is a no spoiler stream, so this is safe to watch if you haven't read Fire and Blood and you don't want to be spoiled. That's about as close as we'll get to a spoiler. Is a little wink and a nod, and we know where this is going. But yeah, we're just dealing with how it's come out on screen, and maybe this is a good way to give you an opening question, Fede. I think I've seen a lot of people say this. I'm enjoying this show way more than I did reading Fire and Blood, and in particular. And that's not a slight against George. Fire and Blood is written as an outline, essentially. This is the fleshed out version. But what I was so excited about going into the season was just the idea that there was so much room for the writers to flesh out the characters. And I was excited to see how they would take these sort of backbone events that we have, like the Rhaenyra, Daemon, there's a brothel, maybe Harwin's involved, maybe Cole's involved. Like, that was the most insane knot of rumors in the books. I really like how they spun it out. So what are your feelings about how they're adapting Fire and Blood in general?
I think they're doing a wonderful job. I think Ryan Condal should just legitimately become George R. R. Martin's heir. Like, as you said,
the prince that was promised. That's what I like to call him.
Literally, yes. That should be him. I mean, obviously, it's a different medium. Obviously, you get to see things and you get to actually hear what ended up happening, as opposed to different chronicles told by different people who maybe witnessed the events, maybe were writing a generation or so later. And obviously, I mean, George did also say this is not necessarily canon in the book, but at the very least, the show is presenting one story, right, and saying what happened, at least in that universe. So, and much like yourself, I did enjoy the book immensely, but getting to see everything on screen and actually getting to enter the characters' psyches, I feel like it really did a number on me. And I do think, honestly, that the show is maybe up until this point has really taken a lot of care with the Greens, and especially showing you Alicent's perspective. And I'm not saying it's in their favor. I'm just saying they've crafted that part of the story really, really well. We knew nothing about Alicent from the book. We knew nothing of what she was feeling, except for she obviously wants her son to be king, which, fair. But and as the the most anti-green person out there, I am still kind of appreciating it, because I don't think that the show should just be, woo, the blacks are right. There should be nuance in both ways, right? And in both directions. So I am enjoying also the way that they are portraying both sides, even if I think up until this point they've kind of shown us more of the Greens. And they do also have a different approach in terms of plot with the blacks. Just no spoilers, but they're not quite as united as they were at this point in the book. And that is kind of due to a couple of changes that have happened.
I think they're going to get there. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But I do think that the adaptation is the adaptation that was promised.
The Greys and the Greys, says Swagger Dagger. So yeah, that you raise a couple good points there. So beginning with the Greens and the idea of like trying to help people understand their angle a little bit, you have to begin with the idea that the audience is going to sympathize with Rhaenyra and Daemon because they are reeking of Targaryen energy. That's why the show exists, is because we all think the Targaryens are interesting and compelling, even if a lot of them are crazy and sadistic and whatever. Like, they're interesting people. The house is interesting. The lore is interesting. So the green side, and Rhaenyra is the stated heir. So like the basic first facts you get of the story is like, well, Rhaenyra's the heir, and this other crew is coming to cause a succession crisis by claiming the throne for Aegon. And Rhaenyra is trying to be the first queen of Westeros, which we, the modern audience, very much are in favor of. It's obviously stupid to say that only one gender is capable of being in charge of stuff. And if we picked one gender, I think we maybe picked the wrong gender, but that could just be because I'm so disorganized myself and rely on Minty to like just. Anyways, let's not even go into that. But the point is, yeah, I completely derailed my train of thought. The Greens would just be thieves. Like, there's so many reasons for the audience to root for Rhaenyra and the Blacks. So the Green side needs more, like, it needs more work to like, well, why are they not just transparent victims?
Right. They need empathy.
Exactly. And so that's why I started out with Alicent as a young person in Fire and Blood, saying, okay, let's look at where she started with. Her dad is pushing her into this creepy political situation. It was Jaecerys in the books, but why is she like bathing him and acting like his bed servant when she's 14 and he's the king and her father's the hand? Then there's the whole thing where she's kind of put around Viserys, and then Viserys chooses her, and we're all wondering if there was love there. So Alicent, it was easy to sympathize with. Otto's right out. Like, we don't sympathize with Otto too much. But Alicent at the beginning is sympathetic. Now, she has taken quite a journey here between episodes 4 and 7. Now she's committing open treason. She's definitely playing the evil stepmother archetype in some extent. And so even while we can still sympathize with her to some extent, like, she's got a point about Rhaenyra's kids, everyone is pretending. It is an emperor wears no clothes situation. But Rhaenyra is also right when she talks about her cloak of false righteousness and all this other stuff. Like, that's totally accurate as well.
Yeah, because, I mean, the thing with Alicent, the only problem that she has at the end of the day is that she's obsessed with Rhaenyra getting some kind of retribution for, you know, things that she has done, which may be wrong in Alicent's, you know, viewpoint and view of the world. But at the end of the day, you know, what is it to Alicent? She obviously, I mean, I do understand she's clearly jealous of the fact that she doesn't get to take those liberties and to have that freedom, but it's not like, you know, anybody's taking that away from her. She just chooses to follow a different path, right? But then she holds it against Rhaenyra for making her own path.
That's exactly right. And even if we take Alicent's most credible line of accusation, which is essentially she's endangering the realm with her decision making. Okay, and that's my main criticism of Rhaenyra too. It's just that, because the test is always putting the realm first. For all these high lords, who cares what their personal desires are? At the end of the day, they're responsible for thousands, tens of thousands of people. That's the most important thing. Team small folk, all that crap. So Alicent, her most credible accusation is that Rhaenyra's decision making is creating an unstable situation that could lead to war. If Alicent was putting the realm first, she wouldn't be the one like trying to agitate everyone about that situation, especially when the king told her not to. And that's what I called her out for in the Jace and Helaena video, undermining the king's wishes and essentially making the likelihood of a succession crisis higher by telling her son that he's going to be king. So that was my whole point with that wedding proposition, is like, this was the moment here, probably the last moment, that Alicent had to put the realm first and also potentially the safety of her children first. Although I do understand the arguments that like marrying Helena and Jace wouldn't necessarily have solved everything. Potentially Aegon or Aemond still could have been used to launch a challenge. I just said that wasn't likely because without the backing of House Hightower, and if the Hightowers, Velaryons, and Targs are all united, that this is all legit and Jace and Helena are the next monarchs, then it's really only like the Faith that could challenge that. But I see the Faith and Old Town and the Hightowers all as the same thing.
Oh, so, yeah. They're in bed with each other.
Yes. Yeah. It's not a very exciting bed, but they're in there. Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, you do realize that it's a pretense and that she doesn't actually care for the well-being of the realm, because if she did, then she would prepare Aegon to be king, or, you know, and instead she just leaves him to not care about anything, which, I mean, again, fair. He, you know, for his, you know, to kind of take his defense, he doesn't want to take the, you know, rule away from his sister, half-sister. He has no interest in ruling or behaving because he doesn't have to. So for his part, obviously, he's just behaving like a spoiled prince, which he is, but he is absolutely entitled to be. just like Daemon was, right? But if Alicent really cared about the realm, then she should have, kind of raised the Aegon differently, or made sure that Viserys did. Because Viserys did make sure that Rhaenyra sat in council even when she was younger, first when she was cupbearer and then when she was actually sitting in council, so that she could, learn a little bit of the machinations, and now it worked. But with Aegon, he did no such thing, and she encouraged no such thing. So do you really care about the future of the realm?
Yeah, and I definitely picked up on that too. I was like, if she really is thinking that Aegon's going to be king, she's not doing a very good job of raising him. And even Viserys gets barely a passing grade for preparing Rhaenyra. Like we picked on him a lot in the first 5 episodes. There are, in some ways he prepared her, in a lot of other ways there was some missing coaching. Like for example, I said that Rhaenyra didn't make the most of the situation where everyone was trying to all her suitors were, trying to contest for her hand. I said that she should have been using that to build political alliances, even if she's rejecting someone. And instead, she obviously didn't do that. And that I blamed more on Viserys, because it's like Viserys should have been coaching her going in. Instead of springing Jason as a surprise, he should have been talking to her. This is Jason Lannister. This is what he's like. This is what we know about him. This is why he's important, etc., etc. And it's even worse, like you said, with Alicent and Aegon. The fact that Aegon is drinking so fast openly at the funeral, that just shows you, like, Alicent is not, like, he should know better himself as far as just what kind of image he's projecting. And
Exactly,
Alicent,
it's also bad form.
very. And Alicent hasn't coached him, and she also doesn't have enough control over him to take him aside and be like, maybe slow down a little bit or just stop drinking, So.
Yeah, and that will be very clear in episode 8, that she cannot control the situation.
Fede, time traveler Fede. So let's see here. Hey guys, I just joined. Can you all stop talking and go back and get me up to speed? Thanks. That's good. My fans have the best humor. Yeah. So we're just getting started really here. Let's shift the focus. Actually, no, I got one more thought about the green side, since we're talking about the idea that, like I said, Rhaenyra is the rightful heir. So you have to look for reasons, as either as George or Ryan Condal. How do we make the green side compelling? I think the green argument really is the Maester conspiracy argument. It's the idea that Dragon Lord monarchs are dangerous. They might be Jaecerys, but they could also be Maegor the Cruel. And there's not much you can do. You saw how hard it was to get Maegor out of power. It basically took 6 years, 5 years. Most of his reign was people trying to get him out of power. And nobody, like we in the modern world, of course, frown on monarchy, don't we? Some of us find it amusing in passing, but it's only amusing because it's not really a monarchy anymore, even though the Queen owns Australia and Canada, I found out, which is weird. But point is, we're not monarchy fans, the modern audience, and it'd be even worse to be subject to a king or queen or emperor that has a godlike magic power that they can use to wipe out armies and cities anytime they want to. That's not a good thing, really. So that's really the green side, is we're trying to create a world with no magic and no dragons and no glass candles. It's less fun for fantasy, but probably safer for everyone.
Right.
But less fun for fantasy, so who cares? You get what I'm saying, though. Like, that's the idea. Like, the Hightowers, they're not just seeking power for House Hightower. They're trying to put the throne in the hands of people that are more stable.
More stable.
Right, yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I
like
150% believe the Maester's conspiracy. I just don't know if the Hightowers are, like, fully on board with that, in the sense that they're aware that it's something that's being done and operated, because it's been a century, and I do believe that it's been going on for basically a century. I don't know if Otto Hightower is in on it, or
I agree. Probably he's a useful idiot, and they're using his ambition. I think, yeah, Hobart smells like he might know something, but he could still be a useful idiot as well, because what the Citadel's game would be to control the Hightowers is essentially using their ambition and also helping them gain political power by their alliance with the Citadel and the Faith. Meanwhile, the people that are actually inside the conspiracy, which would only be a few people at the Citadel, not like the entire Citadel, have the idea of ultimately we want to supplant the Dragon Lords. Ultimately, we want to put Viserys on the throne and not Rhaenys, because Viserys doesn't have a dragon and Rhaenys does. And Viserys is more controllable than Rhaenys, so, yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you elaborate on your thoughts comparing... Sorry, I've got screens in my way. Let me just wait for this to scroll up higher. Or I can shrink this. Okay, can you elaborate on your thoughts comparing Rhaenyra's bastards' positions vis-a-vis the Lannisters in A Song of Ice and Fire? Yeah, well, there's some important differences. Obviously, we're invited to make the comparison just by the name Joffrey. You know, that's kind of a lampshade or whatever. One of the big differences is that Lenor and Harwin and Rhaenyra are all on the same page. Whereas Cersei is, of course, deceiving Robert about her kids, right?
Yeah, and I mean, also, I think the most important difference is that with Rhaenyra, it's kind of done in plain sight. Everybody knows. Cersei, you know, when it comes to Cersei and Jaime's kids, nobody really knows. I mean, yeah, there is a rumor going on, but it's not as widespread. And at least us, the readers, we don't really find out until Ned figures it out. It's not flaunted, and that's the thing. Not that Rhaenyra flaunts it, but that's what her you know, her foes and Alicent. That's what they say, that she's flaunting it for everyone to see, and that she's kind of getting off of that she can get away with anything because she's the heir and she's entitled to doing whatever she wants and to breaking every rule. With Cersei, it's totally different because she's not, you know, I mean, they even the kids have no idea, right?
Yeah, she hates Robert and has a weird egomaniacal, incestuous thing going on with her twin cousin. It's the Narcissus looking in the mirror, you know, gazing at their own reflection when they look at each other kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a very different motivation around it. The thing about it is, well, there's a couple parallels. One is just that a succession crisis can happen anytime there's infidelity and multiple heirs. I also used Robert as an example. So obviously Rhaenyra's got some double standards because she's a woman. Some of that is politics and some of that is just biology. You always, when a woman gives birth to a child, you know she's the mother. You don't necessarily know who the father is, so that creates certain differences. But I've also made the point that, like, any king having bastards is bad. Robert's bastards are a political liability. The Blackfyre bastards are a political liability. The Blackfyres were legitimized, and that made them even more of a problem. But there is a reason why Cersei is going around killing Robert's bastards. It's because they can be used to make a different claim to the throne, because her children are, in fact, of illegitimate birth. But even if they weren't, people can still use bastards to make a different claim to the throne if things become unstable, if the ruling monarch becomes unpopular, sick, injured, anything like that. Like Daemon Blackfyre was just more martial than Daeron, and people use that as an excuse. So this is why I always sort of like get on this soapbox so much about the small folk and the high lords. Their main responsibility is to keep the realm stable, meet the needs of the people, and not play the Game of Thrones and cause a war. It's because we're just watching all these people make these various decisions and mistakes that are going to lead up to this war. But because it's good writing, we also understand why they made all these decisions. Like with Rhaenyra, for example. She was forced to marry Lenor, who is gay and doesn't even, you know, like, so it's not even that it's a political marriage. They don't even have the Catelyn and Ned room to sort of grow into a kind of loving romantic relationship. Lenor literally isn't sexually interested in women. So it's a tough situation for Rhaenyra. You can understand why she sought love, or at least affection or whatever with Harwin. It seems like she found all of that with Harwin. So I'm happy for Rhaenyra, even while I say that's irresponsible. And in the book, she did flaunt it a little more, just to your point, Fede. It says that, like, she always had Harwin at her side at every feast and every gathering and stuff. You see that a little bit, like when Lenor and Rhaenyra come back to their chambers, Harwin was there babysitting the kids. So obviously they're not keeping it that much on the down low.
Right. And it's actually it feels almost like bad karma because on the show, Rhaenyra does say that they tried to conceive children multiple times, and every time she says, I would hope it would be yours.
Yeah.
And then the kid was born and he didn't look anything like Lenor. And obviously in the show, it's even more, there's even more of a stark difference because Lenor and the Valerians are black, and the children being born are not people of color. So they don't have Valyrian eyes. They don't have violet or purple eyes like Rhaenyra. They don't have white hair. Again, with Cersei, at least they look like their mother. And you could argue, well, okay, they just, look like their mother. But with Rhaenyra's kids, they don't even look like her.
Yeah, and of course, there's the comparison of Daemon and Laena's kids, which should turn out approximately like Lenor and Rhaenyra's kids. But of course, they don't look anything like each other. So.
Right. And then when Daemon and Rhaenyra have kids, they look exactly, they look truly Valyrian. So that's even more of a confirmation.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things, like, this is why, and we should start with the kid. I build this as a kids thing, and then we're just talking about whatever, but it's okay. It's all about taking various perspectives. We have to be able to do that. We have to be able to look at Rhaenyra's situation and say, yeah, she was irresponsible, but we'll also understand why it happened. Mm-hmm. And then we have to look at Alicent's situation and say, yeah, it's understandable. We sympathize with this, but that was wrong too. And just none of it can ever be mutually exclusive. And I think that's where most of the bad takes or whatever comes from, is sort of trying to force the story into a lens of exclusivity, where one person is right and one person is wrong. And it's just not like that. So the point is to enjoy all the different characters and to understand their perspectives, because it's more fun when, Alicent's villainous in this last episode, but we sort of get it. That makes it compelling. So, yeah. So let's start with Bayla and Rayna. I think that's a good place to start. We probably know the least about them compared to the other kids. We met them in episode 6 in Pentos, and the first thing we learned is that one of them is a dragon rider and one is not. And just as with Aemond being the only kid in King's Landing with not a dragon, Rhaena's not having a dragon. Her egg won't hatch. It's very sad. It really pulls on our heartstrings. So go ahead and start with that.
I also do want to make it a point to say that episode 6, there were a couple of scenes that were cut that I do feel like would kind of change our perception of the relationship that Daemon and Rhaena, but specifically Daemon, had with the children. We've all seen that photo. I hope we've all seen it. That photo that from a scene that was cut of Daemon hugging his daughters after Rhaena died, because in the final cut of the episode that there is none of that, and it just looks like the kids are crying, looking at their mother's burnt corpse, and Daemon is just there, yeah, she's dead. And I feel like that completely changes the dynamics there, because we know that they were a loving family, they were having a good time. Daemon would, in any situation, Daemon, the one thing that you can say for him is that he would kill for his children. Maybe it's not necessarily because he's a loving father. Maybe it is because there's his legacy and whatnot. But he absolutely, does love his children. So even just seeing that makes him...
Here you go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yes.
There we go. Sorry, Chad. But yes, they hugged. Daemon can express emotion. He's a little. Yes. It's not Bob Saget, as I keep saying. He's not the Full House dad, but he did hug. He can hug his kids. Yes, not a monster.
Yes.
Well, okay, he's a monster, but not all the time.
But not to his kids, because the perception that we got from the final cut of the episode is that Rhaena just feels unloved by her father just because she doesn't have a dragon, and that is obviously not the case.
Yeah, so earlier we said they're doing a great job of fleshing out stuff. Most of the complaints have to do with the fact that things weren't more fleshed out. That a lot of segments of time got cut, and we didn't have time to see relationships develop and stuff. And this is another one of those things where it's just a virtue of they only had so many minutes, literally so many minutes and so many frames to try to tell this story, and it suffered a little bit. I think we all agree that the Lena, Daemon, Pentos storyline got short-shifted a little. So given that that's the case, I think the whole point of the idea that there's a little bit of favoritism, the way that I analyzed that was just that Daemon, like we said, he's not the most emotionally open, vulnerable kind of guy. And so for him, being a father probably is a little bit weird. And Bayla being a dragon rider, that just gives him an opening to sort of try to do a parenting-like thing, the Daemon's version of parenting. Whereas with Rhaena, she doesn't have that. And so it's probably not that there's conscious favoritism, but just that he has more in common with the one with Bayla because she rides a dragon. What do you think of the idea that I mentioned in my video, well, Daemon should have encouraged Rhaena to go claim Vhagar, and someone else is like, are you crazy? Like, she could have been killed. And then I started thinking about it. It was like, well, that is the Targaryen thing. You go claim the dragon, you could die.
It's their way.
But we saw that even after Aemond claimed Vhagar, he still almost died. So it could be that Vhagar was just a little too much dragon for Rhaena. But then Lena claims Vhagar when she's 7 in the book. So I think we're supposed to believe that it is possible. What did you think? Did Daemon fall asleep at the wheel by not encouraging Rhaena to claim Vhagar when she had the chance?
I mean, I think it's just one of those occasions where it was written that way because the author needed it to be written that way. I don't think it was a conscious choice on the part of Daemon saying, oh, maybe we should wait, or maybe I should just let Rhaena do her own thing. Maybe she doesn't want to claim. I think it's just George needed it to be that way. For sure.
Yeah, we had to get Vhagar on the other side so that there could be
right.
an even dragon fight. Yeah. But given the idea that we're backfilling the story and all, it's just like, well, I guess the question is, what would you have done in his situation? Like, do you think...
I mean, honestly, because we know that Rhaena wants a dragon so bad, that if she really wanted to claim Vhagar, she would have. And yes, maybe she was mourning her mom, who was just, who literally had just died. But I feel like, if it had been Bayla, who's the more willful of the two, maybe she would have already gone and claimed Vhagar if Bayla had been the one whose dragon egg didn't hatch.
That could be right, yeah. Because when you've got two similar characters, you always have to create some personality difference. Like with Aegon and Aemond, it's very obvious, but we should look for them to create delineation between Bayla and Rhaena, so they're not just Bayla and Rhaena, And they did that already. Bayla has a dragon, Rhaena does not. And now we see, the Vhagar, Vhagar, it's possible, was just too much dragon at that point. Because Aemond, like I said, Aemond barely was able to do it. But he had the determination, probably just from being teased and picked on. And that's one of the reasons why I related to Aemond right away, is because I was teased in high school, like a lot of ADD kids are. And so I was sympathetic from him for that. But he used that motivation and fire. And he's just a very serious kid anyways. Like, he's already ready to go to war, pretty much. He's talking about keeping the bloodlines pure and doing his duty. It's like, dude, you're 9. Where's your coloring book? He doesn't have a coloring book. Anyway.
Yeah.
I guess what I was trying to say was just that Vhagar is a lot of dragon. So as much as we emotionally wanted Rhaena to have her mother's dragon, it could be that if you're in Daemon's situation, you're just like, maybe we'll get you a hatchling, sweetheart.
Yeah, that might be for the best.
Let's see here. Okay, just real quick. Not That Karen says, Daemon leaning on the wall instead of checking on his daughter's bloody faces says it all to me. He's letting Rhaenys and Corlys do the parenting. A little bit. I think he was focused on Rhaenyra. What he was doing in that situation is he was posting up by the wall, and as soon as Kristen made a move to go into the fray, Daemon cut over and interrupted him. So I think Daemon's thought was to let Rhaenyra handle her business with Alicent, but to make sure that Kristen didn't get involved. He probably saw, Corlys and Rhaenys with the kids and was like, they're fine. They're with grandma, like whatever, so. Let's see. But getting back to Rhaena and Bayla, Bayla's got some good moments in the story, and I think a lot of people are focused on her. They were twins in the books. It looks like they've aged Bayla up a little bit, probably to give her a bigger role in the story. So I'm excited about that. But now, so I'm trying to think what other. So obviously, okay, one of the controversial things I said in my Aemond video was that the 4 kids were bullying Aemond, in the sense that it's 4-on-1. He's walking back to the castle, and they're stopping. Somebody looked up the definition of bullying, and it's like gathering with the intent to intimidate. And I was like, that's pretty much what they did. They came down there and they immediately confronted him, like, you stole the dragon. And then as soon as he threw a little bit of insult back at them, they were all ready to fight. So I called that bullying, but at the same time, I thought it was very understandable what they did. Like, when you look out the window and you see your mother's dragon, someone else is riding it. I said, anybody that's waited too long to do something that they like, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow. And then all of a sudden it's too late and you feel awful about it. I've definitely felt that angst as well, because I could think of all the opportunities I've missed, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I think when they meet him, I don't think that they were fully aware of who it was until that moment. And then they say, oh, it's him. But I don't think that they were fully sure that it was Aemond. So to say that they were going there purposely to like gang up on him, I don't think is fully accurate, just because, you know.
I was muted. I was saying, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they didn't know who it was. I don't think they came down there to hurt somebody. It's just the way that it played out. From Aemond's perspective, you're walking back to the house and all of a sudden there's 4 angry kids. They're like, you stole the dragon, you know? So it worked out that way, even if they didn't intend
and
to.
Also, all of a sudden, he feels all, you know, big and mighty because he's just claimed Vhagar. He's just, you know, ridden a dragon, so he can now do whatever he wants because he feels like he has the power to do it. So maybe he was also more smug than, you know, he usually was, or that he should have been. And then obviously he's got this rivalry going on with Jace and Luke, who have been teasing him about not having a dragon, and that's where the pig insult comes from. So there's a little bit of everything. And at the end of the day, honestly, listen, like, I think if it's anybody's fault, it's their mother's for not ending the rivalry, you know, for not nurturing a more loving relationship between these kids.
That's actually a great point. And this is that's why I was so hard on Alicent last week, because it's like, you're creating a dangerous situation by training your kids to hate Rhaenyra's kids. Because we can see that the kids do have the seeds of friendship. They're not always split along the family lines. And of course, we had that moment where Aemond came up to Jace by the fire, and it looks like he wanted to say something apologetic about his dad, but realized he couldn't. And so he just stood there awkwardly and then walked away. So we can see, like, these kids they're kids. They've got, you know, they can go different ways based on how they're raised.
In episode 6, I believe, when Alicent yells at Aegon, she says something along the lines of, Jace and Luke are not your toys or like playthings or whatever, something like that, in the sense, because he does enjoy playing with them and maybe playing pranks on Aemond with them, but Aegon for sure doesn't really have a problem with who they are at that stage, at any rate. And then it's just Alicent infusing that rivalry and that hate into them.
Yeah, and this situation is a direct fallout of that, because we see, like, earlier in the day, Aemond is inclined to be friendly, but then when he's being confronted, what are the first words on his lips? Bastard. It comes out, you know. And, you know, I made the point, when you get down to the granular bit of the fight, I think Jace pulling that knife was one of the worst escalations, because Aemond had picked up the rock essentially in self-defense and wasn't striking Luke. In fact, he lowered his arm and was like, she doesn't even know, does he, Lord Strong? And then Jace pulls a knife and comes out swinging. Now, at the same time, the bastard accusation is so serious. It is, they could be put to death for it.
So you understand why Jace did it. So that's why I said it's really well written. All the escalations make sense. You can blame, but you can also understand why it happened. So nobody's acting unrealistically in the situation. And exactly, so yeah, the kids didn't come down there be like, let's go beat the shit out of Aemond, that little snot. No, that's not what they did. But if you take Aemond's situation, they might as well have. Because he's walking back to the castle and here are these 4 angry kids accusing him of stuff. And he's like, no, fuck you. Your mom's dead. I claim the dragon is mine now. And then they fly at him and attack him. So it's, it doesn't have to be that they had the intent to do something to say that from the other side, it was 4 people ganging up and bullying him when he had every right to go claim the dragon, even if it was insensitive. And Talk Studios says, I know I got jumped in elementary school and there are no rules when you're getting attacked. And that's why I said you can't fault him for picking up the rock, because he did that after he got knocked on the ground and all 4 kids were wailing on him. Then he pushes them all off and picks up the rock and threatens to use it. So it's like, that's pretty understandable to me. But yeah. But of course, saying, a pig would better suit you, that was a needless, antagonizing. But like you said, he's just claimed Vhagar. And he's full of big dragon energy when he rolls into that cave, and he was dealing it out. So I was just clapping for it because like that's what we're supposed to be enjoying here. Like we enjoy Daemon when he does the dragon energy or Rhaenyra, and here we saw it with Aemond. So
Absolutely. You can totally see everyone's sides in that fight.
So where do you think this is going with Bayla and Rayna? So Bayla's interesting. Bayla gave Aemond a pretty good punch. And so it shows something about her. Like Rhaena kind of ran at him in anger and was easily pushed aside. Bayla stepped up and decked him, knocked him down. Now Aemond stood up, hit her right back, obviously. But that just shows you something about Bayla. Like she's pretty tough, right? And she's also the one who woke everybody up. She saw and she's like, Jace, wake up. They stole Vhagar. So she's got initiative. She's gathering the kids together. I think she's the one who was she the one who took Jace's hand at the funeral?
Yeah, because they're,
okay.
Yeah. It was kind of a foreshadowing.
Talk Studios mentioning another good point. How do the children know Nanny's will? Yeah, Vhagar's not like a piece of jewelry that a mother gives to her daughter. Like you can't call dibs on a dragon is kind of the way to say it, Vhagar could have eaten Aemond if she wanted to. What'd you say?
She was up for grabs.
Right, and the point is that it's a dragon's choice. So, because you can't ride the dragon if the dragon doesn't want you to. So, we're going to see that in season 2.
Right, but like you said in your video, there's no rule of inheritance where because it was your mother's or your father's, then you get to claim, like unless you actually go out and claim the dragon, you have no entitlement to that dragon. So
right, and of course, other people have pointed out that before Helaena claimed Vhagar, Vhagar was ridden by Balon, who is Daemon and Viserys' father. So the dragons do pass back and forth between the various cousins and branches of the house. Yeah. That's very common. Talk Studios, I'm interested in what you're saying about the subtitles and Vhagar calling to Aegon. If you could expand on that, I would love to see what that was about. It definitely, you could see that Aemond is looking up for Vhagar, and when Vhagar flies through the clouds, we're supposed to understand that Aemond sees her and is like, okay, there she is, so that was dope.
He had a goal. He knew what he was doing, and that's the only thing that I can maybe fault him for. The timing was, really kind of insensitive. Like, I understand that he wants a dragon and everything, but it's literally Helena's funeral. Maybe wait, because it's not like anybody else is going to claim Vhagar. There are no other Targaryen, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like there's like 10 other people that could. But yeah, he saw an opportunity and he seized it. So,
well, that's because I think Aemond has internalized the logic of his mom. And Minty had a really good point. Aegon, you could see that Viserys was doting on Aegon when he was born. It was such a big deal for him to have a son. So he's probably had more influence on Aegon. Aemond, however, is obviously more influenced by Alicent. He's internalized Alicent's view of this is heading towards war. So when he goes down and claims Vhagar on the beach, yeah, he doesn't give a crap
about the fact that it's Helena's funeral or being sensitive to anyone. He's looking at this as claiming the dragon, the biggest dragon, for his side. So there's no thought given to respect or anything like that. It's just the raw, like, the dragon is unclaimed, I'm going to go claim that dragon. And so it's a power move, and you could definitely say, oh, I was rude or inappropriate. Like, yeah, it just, Aemond isn't even thinking in those terms. He's ready for war. And you could see that because he was staring Rhaenyra dead in the eye the whole time. He's like, I claimed a dragon. It's fine, Mom. I got this. So, yeah, that's why I called him the Green Dragon. He's the true dragon of the Greens. And
Absolutely.
Just like with Daemon, like sometimes we really cheer for Daemon, and sometimes we're like, the guy just murdered his wife. He's a terrible human being. He's a monster. And that's just the character. So, yeah. So, any other thoughts on Bayla and Rayna? We haven't seen Moondancer yet, but Moondancer is the name of Bayla's dragon. I expect we might see Moondancer before season 1 is out, hopefully. One of my favorite dragons.
No comment on that, but
You've been to the future, you
see,
can't say anything about
yeah,
that. Well,
so
I'm hoping
we
for
do
Moondancer, and if I'm reading the tea leaves, it seems like maybe we'll get a little Moondancer. But we were told that we were going to see what is it, like nine dragons in season 1?
Yeah, I think so.
And I don't think we're there yet. So
No.
more dragons to come. So let's see. So let's go next to Jace and Luke. Joffrey's not born yet. When we come back from the time jump, there'll be a third kid who'll be Joffrey, and he'll be like 4 or 5. But yeah, start wherever you want with Jace and Luke. Definitely, we know a lot about these two kids. They have very different personalities, don't they?
Yes. So maybe let's go chronologically. Let's start with Jace.
Oh, sorry. Joffrey's born. He's a little baby. I don't even count babies. They're not really people yet. Go ahead.
No worries. So Jace, I feel okay. So in the books, I'm not gonna say anything, but I really, really, really like Jace's character. I feel like he really steps up when it's time to, and it is also showing in the TV show. I mean, when he's a little boy, I'm not sure how old, maybe 5 or 6, he already figures out, hey, is Arwen my father, first of all, and what do I do about it? You know, and as you also said in your video, he actually goes to Rhaenyra and asks her directly, and, you know, and just goes, okay. You know, he is very rational about it. And then in the following episode, when we're at Helena's funeral, you can already see that Rhaenyra is actually kind of training Jace to, you know, she is raising him in a different way. She is telling him what to do, what should be done, what's good for him, what's bad for him. Go sit with your Valyrian cousins. And he kind of says, they're not my cousins. And she says, the Valyrians are our kin. You better go and do that. First of all, because we need allies, and second of all, because it's good form, just go do it. And he actually does, you know, he doesn't complain. And then he, as we've seen after that scene, he actually does, even with that just small interaction, he does make a bond with, especially Bayla, but he actually understands what his duty is and he carries through. And Rhaenyra trusts him with you know, the things that maybe I personally wouldn't tell a 5-year-old, but she's been raising him a certain way.
Yeah, no, it was really, so several good points there. It was really cute when the girls came and woke Jace up. Like, Jace, somebody stole Vhagar. Like he's big brother. Like, Jace, come help us. Like, what do we do? So that was really cute. You definitely felt that.
Right, because the thing about the show is that because Daemon and Lena had been in Pentos all those years, these kids actually don't know each other. They've never seen each other. In the book, they've grown up together because the parents just go to and from Dragonstone and Driftmark every week, basically. So in the book, they actually are a family. They've grown up together.
Yeah.
But in the show, they're basically strangers.
Yeah,
so
they've either just met or maybe they visited a couple times at most at Thanksgiving or something. But yeah, they are essentially strangers. And you know how it is if you don't see your cousins for 5 years when you're like 6 or 8 or something. It's a different person you got to meet again. So Yeah, and what I really liked about Jace, so it starts off with this moment at the funeral where he wants to grieve his dad. It's very emotional, and I love that they thought about this. Like, what would it be like for Jace to be dealing with this identity crisis of Harwin and Lenor? Because Lenor has been the dad. He has been raising, maybe not 100% the best, like he himself admitted, but he has been Jace's dad. But Harwin's been there too. Harwin's not a stranger either. Harwin is this other man that the boys respect, kind of like almost like a surrogate uncle. And now it's like, oh, that was actually your dad. So really touching when he's like, we should be at Harrenhal mourning Harwin and Lord Lionel. But you got to admire that Jace says it quietly to his mom. He doesn't make a scene. He doesn't yell. He doesn't act the fool, kind of like Rhaenyra did a little bit on The Hunt, where she came back after the Jason proposal and loudly confronted her father and started a scene in front of everyone. Jace didn't do that. He was discreet about it. And then when, his mom was like, no, this is the game we have to play. Now go comfort your cousins. Then he went and did it. So definitely a good kid. You can see Rhaenyra's doing a better job with him than Alicent is with Aegon, clearly. So we relate to Jace a lot. There's a lot to admire there. Like I said, I do think he was wrong to pull the knife, but easy to understand with the bastard accusation. And he probably thought, maybe Aemond is about to whack my brother with the rock. So he froze for a second, and then he charged in to do something about it. So that's understandable too. So yeah, Jace seems to be a pretty good kid. He seems like steady. He's not wildly emotional. Like in the training yard scene, I would have handled that very poorly. The instructor treating the one kid's better than me. I would have been like totally in my feelings about that. And Jace is totally chill. He just takes every challenge on. He fights the bigger Aegon with ferocity. He gets his ass kicked a little bit, then comes back. And then Aegon comes back and knocks him down, but he doesn't start crying. He just keeps up the good fight. So true blue.
He has no
Jace.
insecurities. Yeah, you can see that, he's been having a lovely childhood. He's loved. He has no insecurities. He has no reason to throw a tantrum or anything.
Yep. And then, so then we have Luke. And Luke, we didn't know a whole lot about last week. The only thing that we got really is like, he was part of the pig prank. So we know Luke is like a little gamey, right? He's not shy or quiet. He seems like pretty spirited kid. And then this week, of course, we see Luke. He charged in several times against the bigger Aemond. Even after he got his nose broken, he still was in the fight. And then, of course, he picks up the knife with the great animal snarl. Just, the freeze frame. He looks like a little psycho. Of course, he's, just in the moment there. But, yeah, Luke came across pretty strong. What are your thoughts on him?
Did you do that on purpose, what you just said?
What?
Luke came across pretty strong.
Oh, no. No, I'm not. Now I'm going to get my tongue torn out.
Let's get Jaecerys on the phone right now.
He warned me so many times, too. Disgraceful.
No, I like Luke. I really, really enjoyed that little interaction he had with Corlys. Where Corlys is trying to be the nurturing grandpa and say, oh, you will follow me as the Lord of the Tides, blah, blah, blah. This will be yours. He tries his best to be a good grandpa. And Luke just goes, I don't want it. And we got a kind of a Jon Snow flashback there. But then he says, because if I'm Lord of Driftmark, it means you guys are all dead. And that broke my heart. Because obviously as a 4-year-old or whatever, that's the only thing that he can think is that if everybody else can just be alive forever, that'll be grand for him. He doesn't want to say goodbye to his parents or grandparents.
I'm going to put Rhaenyra over here just to remind me not to commit so much treason. Here, I'll put it right there. There you go. Sorry, Rhaenyra. I'm sorry. Shh. Two families. Yeah, you're right. The Luke thing, and you feel like Corlys probably came on a little strong there. It's like Luke hasn't met Corlys but a couple times or ever, and all of a sudden he's like high tide and the Lord of the Tides and all this stuff, and Luke's like, what? I have a little seahorse toy. It's the toy. It's a seahorse.
Yeah.
Like Corlys, and I think that's like kind of consistent with his character. Rhaenys is obviously a really interesting moment when Rhaenys called him out on his own pride and vanity and all that stuff. Even though it's sweet that he's carrying this axe, for the grudge of Rhaenys getting passed over, it's obviously wrapped up in his own pride and ambition too. And so you see that, I feel like, in him coming off, and this may be just, again, due to the time constraints, that conversation, we should imagine that it was longer and that he didn't just walk up to Luke and say that first thing, but it definitely is like a little heavy for Luke in that moment. It is, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, his Uncle Harwin just died, right? And then now they're all here mourning somebody he didn't even know, and everybody's sad, or, I mean, some people are sad. The Greens are not sad. They're bored.
Aegon.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Hashtag Aegon.
Yeah, Aegon.
So
I found that really, really cute.
well, what do you think of Corlys and this whole situation with the kids? I mean, it's interesting the way, like, I think a lot of people guess that line about history doesn't remember blood, it remembers names, would end up being about his rationalization for the kids. And it did. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. Let's compare, if you will, Rhaenys putting so much emphasis on the blood as she's a Targaryen versus Corlys, who's a self-made man, thinking more about the legacy and the name of it.
I mean, it's all right there already. It's also very interesting that Rhaenys is trying to propel Bayla to be the heir, because that's all. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, she's also kind of getting that revenge for herself in that sense, because she is making the female line prevail in the Valyrian dynasty in that way. So she's kind of saying, listen, Corlys, if you really, really care so much about my right to the Iron Throne, then why not give this one thing to me and just do it for Driftmark, since you clearly have the power to. So I thought that was really interesting. But
you can see the compromise. You can see the compromise coming, obviously, because they tried to marry Jace to Helaena. That got rejected. So it's pretty obvious that the solution for Corlys and Rhaenys will simply be to engage Jace and or Luke to one of the two girls, and then it's kind of sewn up. So the idea is that Jace, being the eldest, is in line for the throne, so it's the second-born Luke who would be in line to inherit Driftmark. So I think we're gonna probably just leave that. A lot of that's gonna be resolved in the next episode, I expect, or at least addressed. So we'll see tomorrow what's going on with that. But you could see the obvious compromise that's there. And if you've seen some of the pictures from the next episode, I think there's a couple of like Jace and Baela standing next to each other. It looks like maybe they've been betrothed or something. So I think that's pretty reasonable speculation based on what we've seen. And so Luke, what did you think of? I mean, wow. So Alicent demanding Kristen Cole take out Lucerys' eye in open court, like, people were comparing that scene to Cersei demanding the wolf, and I think that's absolutely right. But the other scene that I thought of was Lady Stoneheart, because there's a moment where Alicent is standing there, and she absolutely breaks when Viserys says, we'll have their tongues torn out, and Rhaenyra says, "Thank you, Father." And the look on Alicent's face is the same as Kat when she's watching Robb die, and she's just like, you could see she goes slack. She like spaces out and disassociates. And she's like, well, then I'm just going to have to do something, and grabs the knife and just loses it. And it's the same as Catelyn cutting Jingle Bell's throat and then clawing her face out to me. So, yeah.
I think seeing like all that blood on her son and hearing that he will never, get his eye back just broke something in her, and she went feral. I think honestly that's
Feral.
what it
That's
was.
it. Yes,
And
feral.
I
That's
mean,
it.
it it's understandable. I mean, I've done it kids, but I think I get it. Um, Obviously, from a rational perspective, you can't demand another person's eye, but I get that she is upset, obviously. Also because they were not there and they did not see what happened, and they are having all these different accounts of what happened. So,
Yeah, and I've so when we talked about she went full goblin mode. When I talked about Dany, as I love to do in my 90-minute "Who's the Real Dany" thing, one of the things I tried to address was this idea that there's this dichotomy, like Dany's either the Mysa, the mother, or she's the dragon, and that these two things are opposite. And the more I thought about it, I was like, no, there's nothing more ferocious than the mama bear, the
and
angry
mother.
mother, the mother protecting her cubs. And that's actually when we see Dany's dragon come out in the books, is to protect her kids. So it's like, these are actually the same character, or they're on their way to being harmonized as Dany learns how to unite her empathy with her steely backbone and determination to defend her kids at all cost. So with Alicent, this is a little bit of like the mama bear energy spilling out of control because she's repressed so much that when it breaks, it's just like she loses it, kind of. And I thought that was really compelling.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, again, like what really, really drives her mad in that moment, it's the fact that from her perspective, Viserys is just taking Rhaenyra's side once more, and he's never doing anything for her or their children, and it just drives her crazy that he has this, in her eyes, double standards when it comes to Rhaenyra and then their children together.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that too much. There is that line where Alicent's like, he's your son, Viserys. And it's one of the most heartbreaking things that she says in the conversation. And you can see, like, yeah, Viserys did dote on Rhaenyra and maybe a little bit on Aegon. But after that, it seems like Alicent's kids are almost like grandkids to Viserys. There's a little bit of an afterthought. We don't see any scenes of him with the kids bonding or instructing or showing Aegon the Valerian model and the Inaugurion and all that stuff. Like, we don't see that.
No,
So,
we only see him and Lionel looking, from the balcony to the training yard and being all smiley. Oh, like look at my kids and grandkids. But that's all we get. We don't actually get interactions with them that are positive.
so let me get real quick. I've had several people in the chat asking about something, which is sea smoke. Now, in the books, very
I
minor
have so many
spoiler,
thoughts.
sea smoke eventually. So in the books, Lenor, as far as we know, Lenor did die. I very much like the change and think that it's mostly the kind of thing that, like, oh, this was actually just a secret no one found out about. It works very well like that. The only issue with it is that he's bonded with sea smoke, and in Fire and Blood, after Lenor dies, eventually down the line, somebody else will bond with sea smoke. So now we have the question of, well, how are they going to resolve this? There's a couple ways I've thought of they could do it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So I have to step away for 30 seconds, and I would like you to go ahead and speculate on how you
Absolutely.
think what they might do with the sea smoke thing.
All right, we'll do. I actually really, really like the change of keeping Laenor alive. I know that there are a lot of people who didn't, but I thought it was great. I actually made a Twitter thread about this a few days ago of why I don't think it constitutes a continuity error or problem, or that it will constitute one in the future. There are mainly two ways why I think that it works. One is that, of course, the easiest and most straightforward one is that there are at least 10 years that go by, from Laenor dying until, I don't want to spoil, so until the next person comes and claims sea smoke. And in those 10 years, we know that, so what do we know? Well, first of all, obviously anything can happen in 10 years, right? But Lenor had said a couple of episodes ago that he kind of missed battle, fighting, military strategy, which we saw he was really, really good at. So we also know that fighting has resumed in the Stepstones. So the obvious thing for him to do would probably go and be a soldier in an army in the Stepstones. So it would be very, very easy to just die there in the next decade. And honestly, it would be such a lovely quote unquote death, because it would be one that he has chosen, right? To go out in glory, fighting with the sword in his hand, rather than being killed by his lover, which is horrible way to die. I shouldn't have to say it. But so dying in the Stepstones, would be the easiest way. And this is what I wrote on Twitter too. I think it would be so beautiful. We don't have to see the Stepstones or the battle or anything, but it would be so beautiful to just see years from now, maybe Rhaenyra's on Dragonstone, she is doing her own thing, whatever, and then she just hears Seasmoke wailing, in pain or whatever, and then she is the only person who knows, and Daemon as well, she will realize right then what that means, and so we will just kind of see her have a moment of private mourning and grieving for Lenor.
You could see something like that. You could see Carl Corey show up on Driftmark with one of Laenor's belongings, wanting to carry word of his death to his parents. There's a million ways it could be done. There's a question of whether or not Seasmoke, and this is to me the biggest question, is how would a dragon rider leave their dragon? I joked, did they throw rocks at it like Arya did with Nymeria? Like, no, Seasmoke, you stay, boy. Or did maybe Seasmoke went with him? Probably not, because the idea is like he shaved his head. He's trying to be incognito, so he wouldn't bring
also,
his
they
dragon.
would notice.
So we'll see. We'll see what they do with Seasmoke. My point was just that it's not a continuity error yet. There are several interesting ways they could resolve it. There could even, if they want, they could invent a way that, like, the dragon bond goes slack if you don't nurture it for years and years. Maybe if Lenor wills to let go of the bond, it can fade so that where he can be claimed by another dragon.
Maybe.
We don't know. Like, we don't know all the ins and outs of dragon lore, so there's plenty of room for Ryan to fill that out if he wants to.
Absolutely, and I have full trust in Ryan to find a way to make it work. One other theory that I really, really like is that actually they could make Adam be Lenor. So Lenor would come back, but obviously he would need a different identity and a different persona, and he would just be this person. And obviously, people could say, oh, they would recognize him. Would they? It's not like there's social media or pictures, like 10 years have gone by, he would look older. Not everybody.
Well, this is unfortunately where I have to remind you that we're not trying to go past where the show's gone so much. But of course, Fede is referring to the character that we don't know yet. You know his name is Adam. That's what you know. It's all you need to know. Right. The other character that claims Seasmoke is a male character. Conceivably, they could make, this is actually Lenor in disguise. So yeah, that's a whole plot line. If you know that plot line from Fire and Blood, then you can understand how that could work. So I do think, I'm just interested to see how they do it. But there's definitely room for it. And somebody's saying, yes, Seasmoke just needs a disguise, a mustache and the nose and glasses, and just slap those on. I've got a picture of Barristan with Arstan Whitebeard, and it's just Barristan. I put the goggles on him, but in any case, killing Lenor off screen is lazy, self-explanatory. No, I wouldn't say so. I think Lenor's part in the story is done unless they turn him into this other character. So essentially, instead of dying, we're supposed to imagine that he has sailed off to live a happy life somewhere, and if he eventually dies off screen, that's not part of the story. The only part of the way that affects the story is the fact that he's dead, so that Seasmoke can be reclaimed. So it's not about following every little nook and cranny of every character's story. It's mostly the parts of these characters' lives that play a part in the war that's to come. So Seasmoke with a top hat and monocle. Yes, chat, go to town. I love it. Memes will be born today. Many a meme. All right, so we've talked about Jace and Luke. So now let's go over to the Greens. Let's start actually with Helaena.
We mentioned Aegon and Aemond, but a lot of the interesting stuff is how they react to Helaena. So let's start with Helaena. I mentioned in my video, it's confirmed now, she did foresee something of the future. She said that Aemond would have to close an eye in order to gain a dragon. That clearly happened. And so this week, it sounds like she's talking about war banners being sewn. Somebody else pointed out, when she's talking about the hand turning the loom, Otto is the hand, so that implies Otto turning the gears of war, which obviously he is. Some people were wondering if there's a reference to the Mummer's dragon, the cloth dragon, because some of these Targaryens aren't who they say they are. I don't think that was intended, but it's possible too. But yeah, your thoughts on Helena the Dreamer? Did you take that in any direction you want to? Helena is her own patch face. Okay, Isabel.
Yeah, she is. I mean, I think it's really sad that we don't see her have any sort of interaction with her father, who is also a dreamer in his own way. So maybe he's the only person alive who could understand why she is, weird in the way that she's weird. Because we see her brothers don't really like her very much. And Alicent tries. She does go and sit with her, but she's also like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Also, why are you looking at insects?
That one look on Alicent's face was gold. She's just like, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
I'll give
Helena.
it to her. Yeah, I'll give it to her. She goes and spend time with her, right? She does, absolutely. But she's a little weirded out. She doesn't really try to understand what's going on in her daughter's brain, which, So I think it would have been nice to get any sort of interaction between her and Jaecerys, just because he could understand. But then again...
Hold on, let me pause you right there, Fede, and ask you, Alice, what about the fact that Alicent has been married to a dreamer? What do you think her, we saw that campfire confession where Viserys is kind of spilling the beans on his dream and what he thought it meant. What if I was wrong? Alicent can see that the dreams have plagued Viserys. She might think that he's crazy and not put any stock in it. Where do you think she falls on that? And how do you think her interaction with Viserys might affect the way she's looking at Helaena?
I think that up until she had children who were kind of grown, all of the dragon stuff that Viserys would talk about would just be gibberish. But then, because she's kind of an outsider to it, but then the moment that her children start being affected by their Targaryen genes, whether it be, I'm claiming a dragon, or I'm having dragon dreams, then she kind of starts seeing in a different light because they are her children. And I mean, she must have been scared when Aegon claimed his dragon, because he didn't hatch an egg. He claimed a dragon. So, what we were saying before, it must always be scary when your kid goes out and says, I'm going to ride a dragon today, especially for somebody who's not a Targaryen, who wasn't brought up this way. So I feel like in the beginning, especially when she was younger and she had just married Viserys, it all sounded kind of like BS to her. Like, oh yeah, you have dreams. Sure, whatever. Like, kind of the way that everybody looks at Rhaegar, and he, and they're like, oh yeah, like he read something in a book, like he liked prophecies, and they don't give him credit for it. But then, maybe now that Alicent has kids who are Targaryens, because for better or worse they are, she kind of has to have a different approach to it.
So she's on board with the dragon part. Like, she's telling Aemond, you will have a dragon. So she's into the idea of her sons riding dragons. We've not seen a word from Alicent of fear or caution about, I don't want you to do blah, blah, blah. Like, Aemond is dragged in like, he's been in the dragon pit. She doesn't act worried about that. She's mostly responding to the emotional need that he's been teased, which is actually good parenting there. So it's really only the prophecy that it seems like she doesn't know what to do anything with. And that makes sense, because we've seen even in the Targaryen house, people react differently to dragon power versus prophecy. Daemon's comfortable with the dragons, but not the prophecy, and Viserys is the opposite. So seems like Alicent is a bit mystified by Helaena, and if anything, she might be worried, it's probably not excited that her daughter is having these spacey dreams and stuff. at the very least, she doesn't know what to do about it. So I think that's interesting. Talks got lots of good comments in here, but I think it was Karsnark that pointed out Helaena, the word Helen, the meaning derives from torch, a shining light, like Helen of Troy. She's the most beautiful woman in the world. That's why they give her that name. And I talked about this when I mentioned Eleni, during God's Grief in Eleni, an ancient legend. Eleni, I believe, is a play on Helen. It's supposed to mean shining light or torch. Hecate, similar. I don't know if that word is related, but she's also associated with the torch. So, of course, we light the way are the Hightower words, and they have the lighthouse is their symbol. So the idea of Helaena, George choosing that name for her, it makes sense. And I even wonder if George was thinking about her being a dreamer already, because when you read Fire and Blood, she sounds like a space cadet a little bit. She sounds like someone who's only half there a little bit. And so it made perfect sense for her to be a dreamer. And yeah, the name is perfect synergy with the idea of House Hightower, because she's the one who can see the future. So she's literally lighting the way forward. Pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah, and it also goes hand in hand with our dragon's name, right? Dreamfire. You
And
got
so,
both sides
right.
of that coin there.
And that was the thing you just mentioned. You were talking about claiming dragons. They haven't talked about it yet, but Helena's dragon is Dreamfire, who is a grown-ass dragon, not a hatchling. She was the dragon of Rhaena Targaryen, who's one of the best Targaryen characters. And she's from about 50 years ago. So Dreamfire is at least
It's big.
like 50 or 60. Yeah, it's going to be a big dragon that Helaena claimed. Maybe they'll show us that, but probably not, because they already did one dragon claiming scene. But yeah, she's anybody that can claim a big dragon like that, you got to take the hat off to, I feel like.
Right. And I think she's in that weird stage where she's claimed her and they've bonded, but she hasn't ridden the dragon yet. And honestly,
No, she rode it to Driftmark. Because we saw,
she did. Okay.
Yeah, because we saw Dreamfire at Driftmark. So again, things that were cut that they could have shown us. Apparently, she's riding her dragon. We just haven't seen it. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, there were 3 dragons. That's true.
So let me ask you this: when she traps the spider in the clamshell, it immediately cuts to Larys. Okay. Somebody commented, Larys was listening through the spider, which just made me want to cry and laugh at the same time. But Larys is a Green Seer theory aside, because I don't think that one's got much credibility. Do you think that they're trying to send a message there by showing her trapping a spider and then showing us Larys, who's obviously an echo of Varys the spider? Do you think that Helena's prophecies will expose Larys at some point? Will she trap him somehow? Is that a thing?
I also caught the Varys thing. That's what I was gonna say. I don't think she's gonna expose him in any way, if not for the fact that nobody really understands her prophecies. So even if she says something, it might be clear to us as viewers or readers, but I don't think anybody would be able to really catch the meaning of what she's saying. Maybe least of all her. I don't know if everything she says is clear to her, even, because as we know, prophecies and dreams manifest themselves in very odd ways, and it's very rarely straightforward. So yeah, she might definitely see and say something that relates to him, but I don't know if they'll be able to realize that.
Perhaps we're just supposed to think about Larys as one of the people who's weaving these threads, creating the war banners and stuff like that. That could simply be it. Because she's talking about dragons weaving, but then we're watching a spider, and a spider weaves. So obviously it's, Larys would be the weaving spider in this situation. So that's cool. So Helaena, somebody's asked, well, how did Helaena claim a dragon? So we're seeing on the show that claiming a dragon is pretty gnarly. Now, obviously, Vhagar's the gnarliest. But here's the thing, and this is just speculation. We saw that Drogon, unborn, in the egg, was communicating with Dany. Dany was dreaming of Drogon before he hatched several times, and the egg always felt warm to her. She felt, I think it was Rhaegal, reaching out to her son in her womb. So even before the eggs hatched, Dany has psychic communication with the dragons in the eggs. And I speculated that this is probably what happens when they put an egg in the cradle of a Targaryen, is that the unborn dragon is going to start interacting with that Targaryen, probably via dreams. Okay? So how did Helaena claim Dreamfire? Well, she's a dreamer. She probably communicated with Dreamfire in her dream. Probably Dreamfire reached out to her. She probably saw a dream of herself claiming Dreamfire, or just saw Dreamfire appear in her dreams and then walked down to the dragon pit and hopped right on her back without any trouble. That is how I imagine that going.
Yeah, that's what I think too. She saw herself, she dreamed herself riding Dreamfire or being bonded to Dreamfire, and so she wasn't afraid to actually go ahead and claim her because she knew that they were destined for each other.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, it's a little fan fiction, if you want to call it that. Maybe they'll tell us. They have gone back and told us about things that have already happened in later episodes. Like Rhaenyra giving us so much exposition on her and Harwin's relationship talking to Daemon, which worked for me because Daemon is probably the only person that she would be that open and vulnerable with. So that made sense. So maybe we'll hear about Dreamfire and Helaena. But like I said, with the dragon's name being Dreamfire and with Helaena being a dreamer, it's not hard to intuit that there was likely a psychic connection that formed first and led to her claiming the dragon. So we will see where that goes. But Helaena is, again, so much more interesting than the 5 or 6 lines on her in the books that we have. I went and searched to see if there was any clues about her being a dreamer. And I searched Helaena. I read every sentence with her name in it. There's not much. It's just really not much. So they've done a really good job of filling out this character and making her like ultra compelling. Spoilers. All of these characters' lives end in such tragedy or go through such tragedy. There's not one who's spared really, but yeah, man. This story's going to take some dark turns.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the reaction. Aegon and Aemond have such a different reaction. First of all, their sister, we are focusing on her playing with the spider. Minty pointed out, I missed it, she's essentially playing in a pile of rubbish. Like it's like the little shells that the people have eaten their seafood and they're throwing the shells into the rubbish pile. That's where she's sitting and like playing with this spider. So it's not just that she's like muttering to herself cryptically. She's just not acting like normal people act in any sense. So she's obviously fully given over to this visionary state that she's always half in. What did you think about the way the two boys reacted to that?
I mean, Aegon is honestly just out of it because he wants to have nothing to do with this woman, more than he has to. So he's clearly not happy that he has to marry her. And he's in that phase where he just wants to have fun, right? And Helaena doesn't seem like much fun because, again, she looks to him very odd. Aemond doesn't think that she's any less odd, but he says he would do his duty. So I think it goes back once again to the way that he's been raised. He's Alicent's kid through and through. He's her favorite. She's already imbued him with, what their plan is, whatever they're doing. He's fully on board with it.
He's just so serious. He takes it so friggin' seriously. And I thought the most revealing things were when Aegon walks away to do more philandering and Aemond does the slow side-eyed, it's just like, Aegon. And then later, as I pointed out, when Otto kicks him awake, Aegon's first word was like, brother? So it's like, he's used to Aemond looking after him, kicking him awake from drunken stupors, rolling his eyes at him. It's like one of these kids is 9 and the other's like 14 or something. But we can see who the older kid already is. So yeah. I like the fact that Aemond has grown up taller than Aegon, because that does happen, the late growth spurt. So, the short kid ends up being taller. I dig it. adult Aemond looks kill. I mean, you've already seen him in an episode, so yeah, he looks amazing just from the pictures that we've seen.
He does. And I'm going to say again what I think I said last time I was here. The actor, he looks so much like Matt Smith, like Ewan Mitchell. Like the casting is so perfect because at the end of the day, like no weird theories, we're not thinking about any of that, but they have to look alike because this is a highly incestuous family and it's only fair that a nephew would look like an uncle.
I got a blue star sapphire, but I don't know if I can hold it in.
Hello,
These star sapphires.
David One Eye.
Yeah. They're not. Well, I'm gonna get an eye patch from the Halloween store. So sapphires, until they're polished, they're pretty dark. But when they catch the light, you can see the shimmer to it. And the blue silver tone kind of jumps out of it. So not a polished sapphire, but it's a pretty big hunk. And this is literally a star sapphire. They come in these hexagonal shapes, and the glimmer is subtle. But I'm interested to see what it would look like polished up and faceted. I'm really hoping they do that. In the books, of course, if you don't know, Aemond One Eye decorates his wounded eye with a blue star sapphire, which is symbolism, obviously, and just ostentatious targness. And we've only seen him with the eye patch. I'm guessing that they're holding the star sapphire reveal for a certain point, but we shall see. And let me show you the art on that, just in case you haven't seen it, because it is great. I'm guessing that Ryan will not deny us the blue star sapphire. So, and there's here it is. This one's by Darkly Green. And this is kind of the classic Aemond face art. So you can see the faceted, it's got like a metal casing, and then the gem is embedded. It's a pretty good look. So this is what we hope to see at some point. I'm okay if it doesn't happen this season, just like at some point,
I'm confused how they would do it logistically because the actor's not missing an eye. So where are you going to put the stone?
Just kind of on top. So it would be some sort of, contraption like that. And then it would have the stone embedded on top. So it's not like he jammed a rock into his eye socket. It's like, or the way that they might just do it is make like a more decorative eye patch with like a leather strap, but then the piece is metal and has the stone embedded into it. I think that would be dope. But
that might work. I mean, I'm still salty about the Valyrian eyes not being a thing on the show. So.
Yep, and of course, in the books, it's the purple eyes and the hair that are the magic traits, not just the hair. But yeah, they just let it go. I'm mostly upset about that just from an aesthetics point of view, just because it makes them look more otherworldly, whatever. But okay, so we've gone through. Let's see. Well, we talked about Aemond a lot at the beginning, and we just talked about him now. So Aegon. Well, let's talk about future arcs. Like, Aegon is obviously being set up as a little shit right now. He's drinking and carousing and not taking things seriously. However, we should expect that to change post-time jump. Time will have gone by. Things have happened. The pressure is ratcheted up. He may very well be on Alicent's playbook by the time we see him again. He may be more on the tip of like, okay, a war is coming. But we do see that he's reluctant. Like when Alicent is like, you are a challenge. And he's like, well, then I just won't challenge her. And she's all like, just by being alive, you're the challenge. But we can see that right now he is basically a slacker. But that can change. That can definitely change. So I wonder how they'll do that. In the books, he goes through a major change, let's just say. During the course of the war, there's a big event that happens and he comes out a different person on the other side of it. But I'm curious to see how they're setting it up. Like with Aemond, it's easy to see the setup. Aemond is this very steely, I'm riding for my family no matter what kind of character. They've set that up with like his bullying and his not having a dragon. So that all makes sense. How do you think they're setting up Aegon's character, I guess is my question.
Can I not answer this question? I have information.
Right, I guess, yeah, that probably would be hard for you to answer. Well, let me put it to the chat then. Well, we'll talk more generally then. What kind of second chapter to a story arc can you write for someone who's like a drunken, like what's the comparison for Aegon in the books? What other characters are kind of like him? They don't really take things seriously. Well, like Robert, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say Renly, but Renly doesn't really take things seriously in the end ever. Yeah, so maybe not.
Because Robert he's a philanderer that becomes king, and he never really stops philandering. He's also a warrior though, where Aegon is not. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess there's not that much to say about Aegon yet. We'll just have to watch for another episode, but he's kind of just hitting one note right now, as opposed to some of the other kids. So I think that's why there's not a lot yet. Well, there was an interesting moment when he said to his dad, he's like, "Everybody knows, father." That was an interesting moment. I also thought it was interesting that Aemond deflected blame to Aegon and not Alicent, when it was obviously Alicent who told him that. So that was a cagey move by Aemond, I thought.
Absolutely. And you can also see Aegon's face that he's like, what? No. Because I do think that up until that point, he, again, still had no qualms with Rhaenyra or her sons. And yes, everybody knows because he's there in the castle and hears the gossip and can see it. But I don't think he was putting any thought to it because he honestly could not care less. Yeah, we do see him change a little bit next episode, so I don't really want to talk about him too much. But
that's cool. Yeah, somebody's mentioning there's a little bit of young Theon in Aegon, except for that Theon is very skilled with the bow, and some of his arrogance comes from that. But definitely a lot of entitlement and cocksure kind of. Yeah, I get that. I thought Aegon was being played by Finn Wolfhard. Yeah, he looks a little bit like him and a little bit like the guy who played Paul Atreides in Dune. What's his friggin' name?
Oh, Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, I was calling him Timothée Targaryen.
I saw that.
All right, so we've talked about... Go ahead.
Wait, no, I'm just like super short parenthesis. The new actor for Aegon, who I believe at this point will just stay until the very end. He is very, very good. You guys might have seen him in a couple of things, and most recently he's been in Domina, a show about ancient Rome, and he actually plays young Augustus. You guys probably have never heard of this show, but it's really, really, really good. It's filmed in English, so you guys can see it, and it literally is House of the Dragon without the dragons. Like, that's what it is. So check it out.
Well, it's a somewhat similar role, so that you can see why that casting might have led to this casting, right? So yeah. The actor's good then?
Really, really good.
Yeah, so far all the acting performances have been great, so I think you meant Kyle MacLachlan. Thanks, Google Blitz. That's awesome. The original Paul Atreides, of course, Kyle MacLachlan. Very nice. Oh. Yeah, you remember 80s Dune. You've seen that, of course, with Sting and all that. Fede?
Yeah. No, I actually have never watched Dune. Like, not even the recent version. I tried, and then
yeah, the recent version is like, if you like sci-fi movies, then you should see it. And if you don't like sci-fi movies, you probably won't dig it. The original one, though, is kind of like got that hokey, cheesy 80s thing going on. So it's a pretty good movie, but simultaneously, it just got some really funky-ass shit in it. So, including Sting. Sting has a really interesting role in the movie. But I was going to say, we've talked about the kids. We mentioned a little bit the parenting, but I was going to ask if we have any follow-up thoughts on the parenting. Rhaenyra, Alicent, Viserys, or even Daemon. Or Lenor.
They probably could have all done a better job.
Well, we kind of actually, I'm realizing we mostly did hit on all already. We talked about Daemon's parenting. We talked about Viserys. We talked about Alicent, and we talked about Rhaenyra doing a little bit of a better job. Yeah, so we actually hit that. So, okay, so what other topics do we have from this last episode that you would like, that you've got a strong take on? You want to talk about Daemon and Rhaenyra?
Sure. When do I ever not want to talk about Daemon and Rhaenyra?
And I've got a couple super chats I need to go back and hit too. So let me do that as well. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I heard a couple of people who were not really impressed with that scene, mostly because of how it was directed. I can see your point. And I do think there might have been ways in which especially their love scene could have been filmed a little better, and like framed a little better too. But I really, really liked the script side of it, and their dialogue, I feel, really, really hit home in various parts.
Thought the dialogue was really strong. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, also, I kind of really had missed the Valyrian, right? The two of them speaking Valyrian to each other, kind of using it as their own way of communicating. When they're talking about really important things, they just switch to Valyrian, which I feel is really interesting. And that right, one line.
So Fede, you are a multi-language speaker, so of course you probably understand better than most. Different languages are better for expressing certain thoughts, aren't they?
Definitely.
Based on how many words a given culture might come up with to express the subtleties around a concept, because different cultures just spend time doing different things and focusing on different things. So yeah.
Absolutely. But I also think it's just because it's a thing that belongs to the two of them, because you don't see Rhaenyra speaking in Valyrian with her father. It's just mostly it's their own thing, and it's kind of their secret way of communicating. I don't know. I found that a really, really good choice on Ryan's part from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's definitely working. My more casual show fan was just like, anytime they speak Valyrian to each other, it's just like, wow, that is amazing. Yeah, so they're using it. They're using it well. So the beach scene, somebody turned up the lighting on it, and there's actually a lot more going on there than you could tell. Like, Rhaenyra's checking out his scars, and Daemon's giving her a lot of really intent, loving looks, and it is a pretty good scene. Yeah, it's mostly like you just can't see what's going on. So
yeah, because Miguel. But yeah, I also thought if we look at the characters and what we know of them, like Daemon was really, really sweet there, and I wasn't necessarily expecting him to be that sweet. So kudos.
I think that when I was watching that dialogue, I think that the line that Rhaenyra said that really locked it in for Daemon was when she was like, "We were meant to burn together," and it was just like that's the kind of love language that Daemon wants to speak and hear. I think that's speaking Daemon's language. So yeah, that was good. I thought that was really good. In fact, that was where it really clinched in for me. That how they've been spinning this, and they really are. I want to ask you about Miguel Sapochnik and intimacy. And have you noticed this? It seems like for example, with Daemon not hugging his kids, that was an editing choice because they filmed the hug and they cut it and they left in that scene where they're standing apart. Is that a Miguel thing? Like, have you picked up on this? That he kind of tends...
I think it might be.
Okay.
Yeah,
to portray things a certain way.
Yeah, or also just choosing which shots to keep in and which not to, based on how they what they look like and how they look, and not necessarily what we're gonna miss out on.
Right. And then I also noticed that it seems conscious that they show Daemon and Rhaenyra kissing a lot and being tender a lot. Most of the other relationships, we don't see a lot of it. So it's almost like they're trying to show us this is the passionate relationship of the show that far outstrips all of the others in terms of intensity and love and passion and all that. It seems like what they're trying to tell us, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Which kind of makes sense because Daemon and Rhaenyra really are the main characters, more if there are main characters in this story. And Daemon and Rhaenyra are restless and chaotic. You know, like that's the whole thing, that they share this dragon nature, and neither one of them kind of know what to do with it, but they are burning up from the inside, and they identify that commonality with each other, and so they're gonna burn together. That's a Targaryen romance right there. That's it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's as romantic as it can get for them.
totally. And you get the idea that when they're burning together, like some other stuff might catch on fire too. Let's see. Talk says watch after the episode stuff. Miguel discusses emotions and his intentions a lot. That's true. He does. I sometimes forget to watch those, but because I do kind of like to let the show speak for itself. But they do tell you a lot in those commentaries. Yeah, I kind of Minty's just asides, like they shouldn't need to. I kind of agree with that. That's why I said the show really should speak for itself. Unfortunately, we do know that they've made this choice to summarize, and that they are cutting they're cutting a lot of stuff, and so it's only natural that it's going to happen. They're going to have to explain some stuff, but like no, Daemon doesn't have grayscale, even though he probably should, but whatever, he doesn't. So all right, so what other plot lines have we not hit? You want to say anything about Corlys and Rhaenys?
Yeah, why not? So I thought it was really, really special the way that they chose to go around about that dichotomy in intentions there last episode. Was it the last episode? I think so. Where she, as we said before, she literally calls him out on what he wants and what he's trying to do, or what he's hiding his intentions behind. And I think, okay, first of all, let me go back for 1 second. Corlys is all about, oh, I'm like the second son of Westeros, I'm a self-made man. For sure, you went on your 9 voyages and you came back the wealthiest man, like, ever. But, like, you're still kind of the scion of House Valerian. Like, yeah, like, maybe you guys weren't the wealthiest back then, like, before you went on your voyages, but it's not like you were, like, a commoner. Like, he's not that much of a self-made man, but I love Corlys. I just think they shouldn't maybe stress too much about this particular aspect of his character, because it's not as accurate as he could be. And in fact, I don't think that in the book, I don't remember him ever saying anything like this. But aside from that, that was just a little consideration there.
No, I think you're right,
Were you
and I
gonna
think it's a logical intuition to say that someone that has achieved so much for themselves, literally physically going out into the world to foreign lands, doing things, bringing it home, you're going to feel like you have a perspective that no one else does. And you're going to feel like no one else really understands earning it the way that I did. Have you gone to the Jade Sea? Do you know about the Straits of Sassafras or whatever it is, the Sassafras Straits by Ashai? You know what I mean? So I think it's logical to intuit that. And also the idea that, like, he would almost be more offended than Rhaenys. That does kind of work for me. So yeah, it's not in the books, but I do like the interpretations they've made, because Corlys is not, like, he is one of the mostly good characters, but there's definitely some decisions he makes that we can question later on in the Saffron Straits. Yeah, Sassafras Straits. I knew that was wrong. That's my safe word, by the way. Sassafras is my safe word, but it only counts if you say it with a like Thathafrath. You have to say it like Thathafrath, or else it doesn't count otherwise. And just hold on. This all comes from Cleo. See, I swear I'm not making fun of people with a lisp. My parrot loves the TH sound. Cleo, who, of course, my pink one. Any word that you say with TH, she goes crazy. And she does it herself. Like, she only talks to me in whispers. She says, "Hi, good girl." And a couple other things. But it's like she does it with her breath. She has like a Julia Child voice that she can use like 5 times in her life. She's gone, "Stop up," or "Stop up." So she can talk like Julia Child if she wants to, but she never does it. It goes like 3 years between her talking, but she whisper talks. She says, "Hi, good girl." And then she goes, she does it all the time. She's just like, and so I started speaking in a lisp to her, like, "What's the matter, girl?" And she's like, and I'm like, "Thathafrath?" And she's just like, so it's a thing. Anyway. We're an hour and a half into the stream, so this is what you get sometimes at the end of a David Lightbringer stream. But just yeah, so that's why I have Cleo emojis. If you give me $5 a month, you can use my special emojis, one of which is Cleo. I might have to go get her after talking about her so much. But yeah, so
give the people what they want.
I'm trying to set you up with she's probably still damp from her shower. That's true, but that makes her funnier. So before we get out, I just want to give you the opportunity to come with any strong takes or feelings that you have about the show at this point, or at the point before you saw episode 8.
Mm-hmm.
So we've covered Daemon and Rhaenyra, Corlys, all the kids. We've hit a lot of the points here. So you want to talk Kristen Cole, Kingsguard, Viserys, Lenor's escape. We didn't actually. We talked about Sea Smoke, I guess. Yeah. Just are there any strong takes from this week that you haven't had a chance to get to?
Let's see. From this week.
The super chats. Yes, thank you. But carry on, Fede. No? Yeah? Are you good?
No, yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, this past week's episode. No, one thing that I honestly want to hear more people's opinion on is, so the chat, please go off. Do you guys, so remember at the beginning of the season, everybody was like, "Oh, Alicent and Rhaenyra are kind of sapphic. They're being, there's a lot of queer undertones there." As a queer person, I recognize the undertones. I think they're totally there. And at one point, I thought there might be something, obviously not that we would ever see anything happen, but again, I do think that it's, if not written, in the very least acted that way. But do you guys think, like, do you still see anything like that? I do think that Alicent, I had this discussion with a friend of mine the other day. I do think that Alicent still has some sort of lingering obsession with Rhaenyra, and that, because every time that they're close, she just, like, her whole perception shift, and this is something that you guys are also going to see this week. It's like whenever they're apart, she says and believes and does one thing, and then if Rhaenyra's close and they're having a conversation, suddenly everything changes. So I'm like obviously she's not in love with Rhaenyra, not at this point. If she ever has been, it's not, that's not what we're talking about. But there is something weird going on psychologically there, and it might stem from the betrayal, but I mean, it's also been 15 years, so I'm not really sure, and this is more of a question, really. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that it kind of started with the younger actresses sort of informing, they were given a lot of room to flesh out the backstory of their characters, and the whole point of doing that as an actor is to more fully embody the character and put those subtle details into the acting. So the idea that there's a little bit of that tension or like extreme closeness, it seems like something the actors were using to inform their performances, so that they're very tender, touchy, they're laying on each other a little bit. Like, that makes sense to me, because the point is that we're supposed to see their relationship as more intimate than it was in the books, so that it is more tragic as it gets pulled apart. And primarily, I believe this works because it more clearly shows the pressures that the political situation is putting on women that are in these kinds of situations, either as the heir, Rhaenyra, or as a queen, Alicent. And so we can see that the situation, the politics, is pulling apart these two girls that would be friends otherwise, that would have stayed close. So, and 1 second here. My main thought here is that, yes, Alicent is obsessed. And I think that the next thing to an actual crush that a guy has on a guy or a girl has on a girl is the sort of like, you see somebody that embodies the things that you want to be. The guy that has the cool hair. You're in 4th grade, you want to have cool hair, you can't do it. The other kid has the cool hair. You're like, man, I just want to have hair like him. And so you're friends with him, but there's also this like, it's almost like lust, because it's like you want to capture that mojo, right? And so I think with Alicent, that's what it is. Rhaenyra represents the choices that she couldn't make, rejecting these patriarchal pressures and really just doing what she wants. Alicent has told herself that that is bad and she can't do that. And so it's understandable that she's upset that Rhaenyra is doing that. But it's even more personal because of their close relationship, and because it's when they were younger, there's a part of Alicent that looked at Rhaenyra riding her dragon and wanted to be that, but was afraid or uncomfortable with it. And so I think that is where that sort of energy comes from. And I do hear Cleo barking. So go ahead and expand on that. And I will be right back. And I'm going to listen to what you're saying while I'm gone. So.
All right. I can see the longing, in a sense, for, that Alicent has and still has for what Rhaenyra has been given. And she's talked before about the way that Rhaenyra is entitled to what she has, as opposed to everything Alicent has, she's had to not necessarily gain for herself, but have to keep, in a way that Rhaenyra has just got to maintain her status and her position. And I mean, that's kind of a double-edged sword, because I don't think that if Alicent had ever wanted to get herself a paramour, maybe one of the Kingsguard, maybe Kristen Cole, I don't know, whoever, if she had wanted to, I think she could have. Honestly, Viserys is decaying, quite literally, physically decaying. So he, first of all, might not have noticed. Second of all, might not have cared. So it's, again, kind of talking about what Alicent feels like she cannot, but mostly shouldn't do. And then she feels enraged that Rhaenyra doesn't abide by those same standards.
Yeah, that's why I talked about it as a threat to Alicent's worldview itself. This whole idea, like, following the rules is how you get ahead. And so, at first, she's concerned about Rhaenyra. It's like, oh no, you're not following the rules. Don't you know this can get you in trouble? And then 10 years down the line, she's now bitter about the fact that Rhaenyra never follows the rules and still thinks she can win that way. So, it's very personal, and that's why we had to separate it out. Alicent has a point, but Alicent also has all kinds of emotional shit wrapped up in it, so. I'm informed that Cleo is being the B word and does not want to come out after all. Minty went in to go get her, and, it's just not good enough for her. Well, she does, yeah, nobody's dad. So let me handle these super chat questions here. Is Alicent having an affair with Kristen? Good question. There's not really clues about it. It's one of those things that we can wonder about. I think it makes more sense that she has repressed affection for Kristen that she feels like she can't act on because of her moral framework or whatever. But I see you shaking your head, so you don't think there's...
Honestly, I mean, when Emily Carey said that, she has a crush on Kristen, I honestly do not see that. Like, did not. Maybe it's in one of the deleted scenes, deleted shots or whatever. That's possible. But from what we've seen, I can't even see that. Sure, he comes to court. He's the new guy. He's handsome. He's young. Okay, amazing. But I don't see her being in love with him. And I don't feel like that's why she felt betrayed by Rhaenyra. The fact that she's left with Criston because Alicent might have been in love with him. I don't think that was the issue there. I think it was that Rhaenyra had lied to her about sleeping with anyone.
Yeah, I think there might be a little bit of Alicent being like, oh, look what you've done to this pure knight. You've ruined him with your, I could see her like blaming Rhaenyra more for that interaction than Criston.
Yeah.
And I think the hypocrisy isn't that she's having an affair with Criston. It's that she knows Criston is a dishonorable person and she's covered up his sin so that she can use him as a tool. Just like she isn't doing anything about the fact that Laurie's murdered his family. And she's like, no, I don't want you to take his eye out, but give me your business card and I might call you when I need you. So Alicent is fully willing to use bad actors like Criston and Laurie's, which is what makes her righteousness so fake and false. But I'm a Green stan. So, I don't know how I'm even saying those words because all I do is stay in the Greens, apparently.
That's not true.
I told people that, like, it wasn't about teams. It's really about characters. Like, everyone likes Helaena, pretty much. And Aemond, a lot of people like him or have strong feelings about him in the same way that they do about Daemon. And then, everybody looks at Aegon. It's like, yeah, whatever. He's, dumb. He's wasting time. He's not taking it seriously. But these are all different people. And it's even while I can cheer for Aemond and enjoy the character at least, Alicent is a completely different person with different choices. So, yeah, it's not really about teams. It's just more about the characters, I would say. And, yeah. But, no, it's funny, man. It's funny. I didn't say anything about Aemond on Twitter this week because I wanted to put my take on YouTube so that I could put all the subtleties and I could make the case for Aemond, but also say, but yeah, he was wrong here and this and that. And then lo and behold, Fede, I log into Twitter this morning and what do I find? There she is.
You're a Green stan.
Girl. There she is. Okay. I log into Twitter. What do I find? Somebody quote tweeting my video and acting like all I did was whitewash Aemond and didn't acknowledge any of the things he did wrong. And how could I be so mean to those little girls? And he punched a girl and all this stuff. So, I don't know. The discourse on Twitter has been pretty rough with House of the Dragon the past few weeks. I know you're on Twitter sometimes. How have you been handling that? Because I think everybody in the fandom, even in the comments, you see some of it. It's tough. It feels like a lot of people are having trouble with some of this stuff.
Yeah. I've definitely been mass quote retweeted to for something I had said about, I think it was about Viserys calling Alicent Emma by mistake, and people suddenly were coming at me because I was the sole creator of all evil in the world, apparently. But honestly, if people feel the need to express themselves like that, it doesn't bother me. I've been around the block. Back in my day, I remember when people couldn't even quote retweet you and they would just screenshot your thing and didn't even give you the chance to kind of reply. But then, honestly, I even stopped doing that. It's rough for some people.
Well, it's Twitter. So, like, when you say, oh, there's hot takes on Twitter, there's hyperbole, there's stan culture on Twitter, it's like, that's what Twitter's for. And, yeah, everyone should definitely enjoy the show whatever way they want. It's just interesting, like, there's a lot of people, like you or Gray Area, for example, both very pro Team Black. But you're also adults who can analyze any of the characters in a rational, non-biased manner at the same time, but still also enjoy rooting for the characters that you identify with more. It's a story. We're supposed to relate to the characters, and we're going to relate to some more than others. Like, I was bullied, and I was picked on, so I relate to Aemond, okay? Mm-hmm. Other people are going to relate to other characters, and a lot of, obviously, women relate to Rhaenyra in a way that most of the men just kind of can't, because it's just, some of her issues are so inherently tied to her gender struggle. That's okay. It's just the thing that gives me angst is when people, like, the media literacy dies and people are just like really only looking at the story from one point of view. And like I said, trying to force it into a lane where somebody is completely right and somebody is completely wrong. I think I have a harder time letting those takes go, Fede. I'm more prone to like getting pulled into the conversation and then having those sort of takes dominate my thinking for the week. And I'm trying to minimize that if I can, I think.
Yeah, I've stopped giving it power, kind of. At one point I just don't look at it for a few hours and wait for it to be over. And if it's not, you can choose not to get notifications for that post.
Yes,
So
I've been using
that's
that one.
been me. I've definitely been tweeting way less ever since the show has come out. Also because I have information, so I want to be careful. But people have definitely been maybe getting even worse on the internet. But there's no way to stop them.
Yes, you could just
So,
mute and block and keep selecting
yeah.
for the audience that wants to talk about it. Like adults, as I always say. But going back to some super chats that I missed. Loved the scene in the Driftmark throne room, and this is from Hazy Dave, with all the kids arguing on top of each other. Yeah, that was gold. Otto and Daemon looking bemused. Yes, so I used that clip in my video. It's just like, he hit me. He pushed Jace. And then it's just like, and all the adult Viserys like sighs and like thumps his cane, and Otto and Daemon are both just like kids. So yeah, that was gold. That was very, very relatable. Let's see here. In the books, were there any other mostly Valyrian couplings that produced non-blonde kids? Asks DM Collins. I don't really think so, no. Not that I can think of. I mean, like, because the whole Baelor Breakspear had dark hair because his mother's
Dornish.
Martell, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I guess you have Rhaenys, Princess Rhaenys, whose hair is dark in the book, I think, but her mother is a Baratheon. Well, she's
Right.
half Baratheon, half Targaryen, so I guess, yeah.
Right, and that's consistent with that Baratheon hair being a very dominant trait in Martin's very basic...
The seed is strong.
Yes, exactly. Strong, yes. Let's see here. We've got... So, yeah, no. And the point is that in the books, it's obvious that Rhaenyra's kids are Harwins. It's not... It's pretty obvious to everyone. So, Orlando says, were Otto and Alicent in on Aemond's attempts to bond with Vhagar? I don't think so, no. Otto snatching up Aegon and Alicent smacking him gave me the impression he was to be ready in the event of a conflict with the Blacks. No, I really think Aemond kept that under his hat. And I think you could see the surprise on Otto's face when the news came out in the room and he said he claimed Vhagar, and Otto was like, oh shit. So I think Aemond really is... I mean, we all have one of those friends. They never tell anyone what their plans are until they do them. They just don't want... Some people are like that, and that's how I read Aemond. Let's see here. Not That Karen says... oh, no, I read that one. Maura Lee, showing appreciation for the content, asking about Sea Smoke. Oh, yes. I didn't read that one aloud, but that was when I asked you about Sea Smoke. So thank you, Maura. Devin asks, have I talked about how Lares might be a warg? Things only one or... he's mentioned a couple of things twice that nobody really else knew of, except for possibly the rats. So I have not watched the video about this. So I cannot claim to respond to the various, whatever the case is. It seems like a big stretch to me. I don't see that Green Seer element playing a big role in the story. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion. So yeah, I probably couldn't comment on that theory other than to say it strikes me as a reach at first glance, but I haven't read the video. So maybe there's a really cagey case for it. I haven't read the video. I haven't watched the video. So I can't say that the video doesn't make sense. I don't know. I haven't watched it. Just the theory at first glance doesn't seem right to me. But maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that?
No, I haven't watched the video either, and I had no idea that there was a theory about him being a warg, but I mean, he is gearing up to be the Master of Whispers, and there's lots of people who whisper around. There are servants who, you know,
Yeah, that's
kind of.
that's kind of my reaction too. Is like there's no reason for that. People don't need to be a warg to be a master of whisperers. Like Baelish and Littlefinger and other people, Mysaria, they have that. Well, Mysaria might be using magic, but those other two are not. And they,
Funny you should mention her.
Yeah, we didn't mention Mysaria. Go ahead, feel free. Mysaria thoughts.
I have nothing to say. You will have things to say next week. Well, tomorrow.
Oh, I see. The tease. The tease is acceptable, Fede. That is okay. We're here to be teased. Yeah, she wasn't. She's been absent for a couple weeks, which makes sense because she has her own separate plot line, which kind of occasionally intersects with the main story. Yes, Freudian there. So, all right. Next super chat that I haven't read. That's what we were doing. How hard do you think it would be to fly Vhagar around with reduced depth perception? I don't think that's too big of a deal. I think really all you're doing with Vhagar is generally, or with any dragon, is generally steering it in the direction you want it to go. The dragon is going to navigate the ins and outs of...
Right.
So,
she flies herself. She's not
right.
a plane.
Right, exactly. She's not a TIE fighter. So, yeah. Or she would be more like one of those giant triangular destroyer ships, but...
Yeah.
She does sound a little bit like an airplane when she's gearing up and flying. I love the different dragon sounds that they've got. Like the sounds that come from Vhagar sound enormous. You really notice that if you listen to it with headphones. You know, I got some high quality studio headphones and I was listening to that passage on headphones, and the growls and rumbles from Vhagar are just unreal. Very Godzilla-like. Star Destroyer, yes, thank you. And yes, you fly like Neo in the Matrix. I think that's right too. It's definitely going to be psychic. Like the reins are there, but I think the psychic bond is more what it's about. As fantasy fans of children, do you have some favorites in how they're written? Well, probably Aemond and Jace so far, but I'm curious to see what they'll show us next episode and how we'll connect that with the things that we've seen from the earlier parts of their life. Because then we'll have the whole arc, and we can say, this turned into that. Like, how is Helena at 19 or 15 or whatever, having had dreams for years and years? Maybe she's a little less disassociative. Aegon hopefully has settled out a little bit. Aemond I expect to be even harder and tougher. So we'll see. I'm sorry, you can't say anything about this. They're just torturing, but that's the thing about being a time traveler, Fede. It's a burden. You can already tell Aemond is going to be a skilled fighter just from that kid's brawl. Yeah, I mean, he had the fresh dragon energy from claiming Vhagar. We know the bond makes you stronger. But yeah, he was serving in that fight. I mean, he was holding his own against 4 kids, and they were all the same size pretty much. So, Jace and Luke train in the yard just like Aemond does. So we're not supposed to think that, like, Aemond is stronger. He's just kind of full of piss and vinegar.
He's also older.
Yeah. What's that?
He's also a little older, which counts when you're that young.
Well, no, Aemond is 9. I mean, he wasn't born before the time gap, was he? In episode 5?
Pregnant. I think basically when she and Viserys are in bed, we're supposed to think they're conceiving Aemond, right?
Well, so in episode 5, in episode 5, she's holding baby Helena, I thought, by the window.
Right, exactly.
So I didn't think that Aemond was born yet until after the time gap, which means he can't be older than 10. And he's 9 in the books when this incident happens. So I was thinking that he's supposed to be 9. Jace also was born right after the time jump. So Jace is like 9 or 10 also. And they look to be about the same size. So I was thinking of them as about the same age. Bayla, similarly, is like 9 or 10 as well.
Okay. I got so confused with the timeline in the show because in the
Yeah.
book, Jace is almost at an age with Daeron, and in
Yes.
fact they're milk brothers because Viserys insists for them to be milk brothers. But
In the books, Alicent's kids are older because Alicent is older.
right,
Yeah, that's it. So it seems like in the cave they're all 8 to 10, except for Luke, who's probably like 6. Because I think Baela's 10 and Rhaena's 8. And Aemond's also kind of short, so he's not even like a big kid. That was my impression anyway. But anyway, we shall see. He's going to be plenty tall when we come back. So that's the point. Is I'm just looking forward to seeing the second part of the story, so we can go back and see what's become, how, because like we've identified all these different traits with like Bayla and Rayna, Luke versus Jace. So now we should see those traits manifest, in different permutations. Lady Lil says, your Aemond take was the most refreshing to see since your Danny video. Thanks for the safe haven. It's too bad Helena can't marry Aemond. He clearly respects her. Yeah. Especially if you've read Fire and Blood, then this is a thought that you definitely had when you saw Aemond say that. You were like, man, that would have been better for Helena too. But we'll see. It's important to remember that they can make changes from Fire and Blood, so you can't get too locked into the Fire and Blood characters. Kyle Holmes with a just cause you're awesome super chat. Thank you, Kyle. And let's see. DM says, I agree. Alicent's reaction to Rhaenyra's one sex act with Daemon was jealousy, both for what Ray has, but also her semi-crush. Yeah, I think it's mostly, like I said, just making a different choice that Alicent has, whatever desire Alicent has to live that life, she has crushed. And so she's mad that Rhaenyra hasn't. I mean, that's pretty easy to follow. Let's see here. How cool is the new character Aemond? The actor did a great job. Yeah, I think the actor was amazing. The behind the scenes are really cool, showing him like dangling from the vertical dragon rig and stuff. Like that was some pretty crazy filming he did. Yeah? Yeah? No? You're speechless. You can say what you want about the kid.
No, I was trying to read the chat. That's what I was trying to do, but it's really small for me. So shh.
Ah, gotcha.
I'm
Yeah, okay.
Granny. You make fun of Granny Vhagar. You should make fun of Granny Fede.
Terrible. No, I would never think of that. Let's see here. So you can, yep, I read that one. Okay, we're all caught up. So I will take last call for questions, and then I will go because clearly I need to rest my voice. It's been a little rough the last couple weeks. Thanks for the concern. It's sort of, that happens to me sometimes. It goes out for a couple weeks. Maybe I've been smoking too much. I don't know. But sometimes that has to happen. Do you think the House of the Dragon writers will make major changes to the narrative? I'm not asking for specifics, just your general feeling. What I'm wondering, Steve, is some of the tragic endings, I wonder if they might not change. Like, and we've already seen they changed Lenor's ending in a way that didn't really affect the story, just so it's not so friggin' bleak. Because that was the main thing I wondered when they said they were adapting Fire and Blood. I was like, really? That story's not a very happy story. Like, just, it's not. So I think that there might be one or two more changes like that, where they take some of the very worst things that maybe aren't central to the plot and are just there so that George can show us how gnarly everyone is, and maybe change those. But like, blood and cheese is definitely going to happen, if you know what that is. So that's definitely going to happen.
I mean, honestly, if we're talking about like major changes, especially to endings. For example, I really, really liked Lena's. The change, with Lena's death there.
Yeah, tell me what you think about that. I was surprised to
Yeah.
see how many people didn't like it. I liked it too.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, the poor woman, she was gonna die anyway, right? Because obviously she needs to be gone for plot. There's no way she could have stayed alive. So I think, the idea of giving her agency and having her choose how she died is really, really poignant, especially because, we just had that very gnarly scene with Emma dying in episode 1, which we all were shocked by, right? So why would we repeat that with another character who is completely different from, well, obviously we knew nothing of Emma from the book, but everything we know about Rhaena, she's very willful. She wouldn't, she would choose how to go. And if you think about it, in Fire and Blood, she actually does try to stand to reach Vhagar.
Yes.
Obviously, our intuition of that was that she was going to try and fly one last time, but who knows? Maybe she was trying to get death by dragonfire in the book as well, and we just had no idea.
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Yeah.
In any case, I really, really like the fact that she chose how to go. She was going to go anyway. People, some people were like, oh, that was suicide. I mean, it's more like euthanasia when you kind of choose how to go when you know that you're about to go, right? When you're allowed that
Yeah, that's exactly
choice
what it
for
was.
yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, there's also that big dichotomy between what Viserys did and what Daemon did. Daemon, at that point, he could have gone and grabbed her and say, no, you're not going to die this way. But he left her, he gave her that agency and he left that choice up to her because she was going to die anyway. So why wouldn't she be able to choose?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there. I think it was a good example of them taking what they knew about the character and then saying, how would this slightly different situation play out? How would that character react to being caught? Because in the books, she has the baby. The baby is deformed. They don't say lizard baby, but it sounds like lizard baby. And the baby dies, and then she has childbed fever for 3 days and then dies. And in her last moment, she walks out to try to mount Vhagar. So they changed the situation and said, okay, let's give her the same situation that Emma had where the baby's, can't stuck essentially, but then have Daemon make a different choice and have the situation play out different. So given what we know about Rhaena's character, the way that she acted made sense to me. So yeah, I didn't have any issues with that. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was a fan of that. I thought that was just a little more epic. I mean, it's a super epic death nobody's ever done that we've heard of. Have your own dragon roast you. Like, that's fucking awesome, to be honest.
Yeah. I was shocked for about like a good 45 minutes there, and I'm not sure I spoke a word, but then I thought about it, and I actually wouldn't have liked to just watch her die in bed.
Yeah, that wouldn't have had the same punch at all. Do you think that the 2 pregnancy death scenes were meant to evoke the end of women's bodily autonomy, abortion? No, because the timing of it. But I mean, abortion's always been an issue. So like, anytime you're talking about women's issues and stuff, like bodily autonomy is part of it. So it doesn't need to be a direct, I was thinking about abortion when I did, like, the women's autonomy is kind of what's at the center of this whole thing. It's the ability to self-determine. That's what the patriarchy takes away from women, is autonomy to self-determine. So that's what all this is about, really, I would say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see. Nelson says, from 0 to 10, how cool is the older Aemond? That's for you, obviously.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm no Aemon's fan, but he's pretty cool. I would say
on a
maybe
scale of 1
8.
to 10 Daemons.
Let's say 8.
So he's 8 out of 10 Daemon Targaryens.
Yes.
Okay. That's charitable of you, a black supporter, to say that. I appreciate that.
I mean, Aemond wishes, right? He wishes he was Daemon.
Yeah, well, I think they've correctly seen that this rivalry, which is, there's evidence of it in Fire and Blood, but I feel like they're really going to play it up. So that's a good decision, in my opinion. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. We're over 2 hours. That happened quick. All right, Fede, well, thanks for joining me on this fine Saturday. And once again, at Lady Multifandom on Twitter. You're also on Instagram.
Yes, it's Fede Daenerys, so it's like Fede my name, but like Daenerys, so it would be, yeah. I thought it was really funny when I made that up. I was like, wow, I can do that.
Oh, I love
and
that
then
kind of
nobody can
stuff.
ever find me.
No, I named Vagar the Iguana Nana. So I love running words together. Mark says, Honey Fun for the voice, thank you. Current midweek content is your Brienne chapter, reads with Nimble Dick. Ah, yes. Don't forget Nimble Dick Squisher Hunt, of course, if you want the full dick, you know. Looking forward to Winds of Winter audiobook narrated by David Lightbringer. No, it's not happening. Not happening, but thank you.
Should be.
No, Nanny Vagar's gonna read Winds of Winter. We all know that. It's gonna take a little longer. It's gonna be like an 150-hour audiobook instead of 40, but it'll be worth it. So, thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you tomorrow night. By the way, I am going to once again attempt to have a guest on Sunday night. I'm gonna try just having one guest and see if I can handle answering the questions and having the guest. But that one guest is none other than Gray Area. So make sure you tune in tomorrow night. Gray will be joining me 30 minutes after the show starts, or approximately. So don't miss that. And have a great weekend, guys. Thank you very much, Fede, for joining me. And yeah.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers, guys. See you later.